Hello again, everybody, and welcome into Fox Sports Shoals Friday Night Football Live. I'm Mike Ezekiel. I'm here with Matt Suleski, my co-host. We got Coach Stedman Campbell from UNA on the show with us today as our guest host, Jaleesa in the studio. And before we begin our show, we want to extend our condolences to the Deschler community and the loss of Coach Jake Linville. I knew him personally back when I was at Wilson, and when I heard the news, it was just a terrible feeling.
Yeah, it's such a tragic story, and I didn't ever have a chance to meet him, but I know he was a young, fine football coach, and I think fortunately it looked at first like it may have been a suicide. It was a self-inflicted gun wound, but it seemed like there was an accident. It's kind of what the police reports were saying, and suicide is one of the most tragic things in our society, and it can get better, and it looks like that wasn't the way he went out, which is wonderful because I hate to see him go like that, but I know it's such a sad thing, and certainly. I think Deschler's down in Tuscumbia, and we wish everybody well, and obviously his family up in Collinwood, Tennessee, and just such a tragic accident.
Yeah, just such a terrible story, and of course we want to extend our condolences, our thoughts and prayers with the Deschler community and the Linville family and the loss of Coach Jake Linville. Hello, everybody, and welcome into Fox Sports Shoals Friday Night Football Live. You're listening in to the podcast today. I'm Mike Ezekiel, the host. I'm here with my co-host Matt Suleski, who's in the studio, the Florala sports writer. We got a special guest with us today, UNA's wide receiver coach and recruiting coordinator, Coach Stedman Campbell. We'll welcome him in a few minutes. Got Jaleesa in the studio filming and producing. Of course, you can tune in to 97.9 FM. Fox Sports Shows Friday Night Football Live is on the radio on Friday nights from 5 to 7 and from 9 to 11 for the postgame show. And Jimmy O and JD will be there on that set, and Matt's been on there a couple times, and I've been on there a few times. So, a lot of good stuff going on. Anything you need for high school football, UNA football, SEC football, whatever you can think of, it's there. Fox Sports Shows, they do a great job. So tune into that. Also, you can listen, or you can read my blog on foxsportshows.com, and you can find it under the blogs tab. Easy to find. We do 2 a week, and check it out. And at this time, of course, as I said, we're joined by UNA's wide receiver coach, Stedman Campbell. Coach Campbell, welcome to the show today.
I appreciate it, Mike and Matt. Thank you for having me on. Look, it's been something I've been looking forward to ever since Coach Gross has been on. What was it, a couple weeks ago?
A few weeks ago.
Yeah, you said you had a great time, and ever since Mike, you told me I was coming on, it's been something I've been looking forward to. So I appreciate y'all having me.
I'm glad you're here.
Well, Coach Gross was the one that actually recommended you. He said, you got to have Coach Campbell on the show. And I said, well, definitely.
I got big shoes to fill.
I guess you do. But, Coach, let's go ahead and talk about Florida Tech last week. That was a big game for us, a big conference game. And in my opinion, I don't think we've seen anybody that good up to this point in the season other than maybe Valdosta. But that was one of the best offenses we faced. And our offense actually kept us in the game with 400 yards, or over 400 yards, and their offense had over 500. So how big was our offense in your opinion?
Well, first of all, it was a big win. At this time of the year, when you get into conference, every win's a big win. We've had such a strange couple of weeks as far as travel is concerned. We had traveled to Pembroke the week before. It was a playing game. We had to get on a plane. We had to make sure kids had IDs and valid IDs and all that, which, we don't deal with a whole lot at our level. We had a really short week. We got back from Pembroke Sunday afternoon, and we left for Melbourne and Florida Tech on Thursday. So, we had a really short week. Thought Coach Gross and put together a great plan offensively for us. I thought we came out and, really did what we set out to do. We made enough plays, kept the chains moving. Dre Hall, made a couple plays in the passing game, broke a couple tackles, turned some short, easy short throws into big gainers. I know Dejon Dukes had one of those as well. So, sometimes for whatever reason, different offenses give different defenses, bigger or more problems than other teams. Florida Tech, did a good job versus our defense of getting into some things and kind of hurting us, especially there in the first half and early in the second half. So, it was good for our side of the ball, with Luke back, having been out 2 weeks. It was good for our side of the ball to be in that type of environment, to have that type of pressure that we had to perform and compete and really, put points on the board and lift the defense up and, just great to see those kids in that type of environment do that.
Yeah, and absolutely. You know, you talked about Dre Hall for us. He had 5 catches for 117 yards, and a couple of those are really big. He broke a few tackles on a couple of screen passes, and, that was big for us. He scored on one of those, and I really think that gave us the momentum in the third quarter to give us, the advantage and eventually the win. So, we got a lot of good individual players. Delvon Carpenter's been big for us the past few weeks. Dre Hall and Lee Mayhall's always been there. We got a lot of depth at wide receiver. And, in the spring, Coach, we didn't really know what we had. We had Lee Mayhall for sure, but everything else was kind of a question mark. Corey Jones coming back and off an injury, and you got a lot of other guys factoring in there. How do you feel about the depth we have at wide receiver?
Well, it's certainly a lot different than last year where we weren't nearly as deep at wideout. Like you said, there was a lot of uncertainties at my position coming into this year. We knew we had Mayhall back, and Mayhall, does everything he asks, does a great job. And, he had 3 catches last week, but they were all on third downs. They were all, big, important times of the game. He and Luke are just kind of on the same wavelength a lot of the times. But you're right. Delvon was a signee that didn't get eligible till late in the summer. So we weren't sure if we were going to have, it was going both ways on that for the whole summer. Signed Dejon Dukes late in the game, late in the summer. Of course, Corey was coming back, but he had a knee, kind of a knee injury, so we weren't really sure how, he was going to, perform on his knee with the brace, and was he going to be 100% back? And, to be honest, he's probably still not 100%, but he's close enough that he does good things for us, and, we're going to try to get him a little more actively involved in the passing game, as the weeks progress. But you're right, they've been a pleasure to see. They're a great bunch of guys to be in the meeting room and coach every day. They're a very unselfish group. They've done a great job as far as everything we've asked them to do, whether it's the run game or the passing game. They've done it with a great attitude, and you can start to see those results come from the amount of work and their unselfishness that they put into it.
And that stat that we talked about, me and Matt talked about a stat last week that was pretty interesting to us. This was going into Pembroke. I don't know what it would be now, but we had 24 touchdowns before the Pembroke game and scored by 15 different people. So that really showed the depth that we had on offense, period, of course, and also wide receiver. And, of course, you talked about all the guys we have now. And, Matt, we've seen a lot of progression with that. What's your thought?
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, you just have so much depth at wide receiver. In any game, it just seems like anybody can step up and make a play. And I know having that type of depth, especially with a quarterback as good as Luke Wingo back there, just provides a lot of opportunities in the passing game. But one of the questions I have for you today, Coach, is that, recruiting at the D2 level, you kind of mentioned to me about the access you get to so much film with Huddle, which is an online film website. You can watch films from high schools and other colleges. And I guess my question is, at the Division II level, do you guys kind of seek out and say, hey, we want to find players to fit what we're doing here at UNA? Or do you say, we want to find athletes and we'll develop them into what we're doing at UNA?
Well, I think to answer your question, we want to do both. We want, our foundation of our program, we want to be from, the local high school guys. And when I say local, it's about a 2.5 hour radius from Florence. But, we also sit down and we don't get started recruiting until a little bit later in the game than the Floridas and the Alabamas and some of those guys. Because a lot of the guys we end up with, they go into their senior year thinking that they're going to get those Division I offers. We kind of get started a little bit later, kind of let the dust settle, let it unfold. But now, we sit down when we start evaluating film. We obviously want the best athlete we can get, the best player. You can coach toughness and fundamentals, but you can't coach height. You can't coach speed. You can't coach athletic ability, and obviously that's what you try to recruit. So we're going to try to find the best athlete that's got the best character that we feel like will come in and be a good member of our program that understands what it's like to work and that football's got to be important to. They've got to come wanting to get an education and understanding that football is just an avenue to help them get their degree and ultimately lead to more success in life after college. So we try to do a good job of finding a little bit of both.
Well, Coach, you're doing a great job, and Coach Wallace and the whole staff. There are a lot of high-character guys on this football team, and when I watch you guys play, a lot of games I see you guys just look like you have the better athletes on the field. So what a great combination there. And another thing, I was thinking about, we kind of it's a UNA escaped Florida Tech. They outgained UNA by about 100 yards, but you found a way to win. And when you get to scholarship level football at the collegiate level, I mean, rarely do teams they win 10 games by 20 points.
That's right.
So you a lot of times you have to catch a few breaks. That's part
Absolutely.
of being good. And right now, looking with the Valdosta State game, Pontius missing an extra point, hit the 54-yard school record. Going to Florida Tech, who, give them so much credit. What an improved team from last year already.
No doubt.
And
they're only going to get better.
Especially they're in a great spot down there close to Miami.
Right.
But, you look at that and just find a way to get through the game. I mean, sometimes, obviously, if you can win 35-10 every game, that's great, but that's not reality. So just kind of talk about how important it is just to find a way to get it done, even if everything's not clicking.
Right. Well, that's what, to me, up to this point, and we are, we're sitting 6-0, and we don't lose sight of that. The best thing we've done as a team, like you just said, is find a way to win. I don't think we've necessarily put together a complete game, offensive, defensive, special teams. I don't think we've played at the level we're capable of, but we have found a way to win, and that comes back to the character that the kids have, the importance that winning is to them. The unselfishness, all the, Coach Wallace calls it the intangibles. All the intangibles that go into the makeup of the team really comes through and, kind of rises to the top, late in the games. If it's close, you need a big kick, you need a big stop. We talked about the defense, giving up yards last week. I think there were 2 or 3 possessions there right, in the middle of the third quarter when we had kind of stalled out that they jump out there and get three and outs in a row. Had to stop at the end of the game when, offensively, we didn't handle that last drive nearly as well as we should have. But, so, it's a, there's an ebb and flow of each season. You obviously don't want to peak too soon. So it's been good to see our guys, the first 6 weeks, it's been good to see them find a way to win, really the 2 toughest games and the toughest teams that we've played up to this point.
And, coming this week, West Georgia's coming in off a big win over Delta State, and I think they have 1 loss on the season against Valdosta.
Yeah.
And then the next week you have to travel to Cleveland, Mississippi to play Delta State, whose only loss right now is to West Georgia, and they're such an explosive offense. So, and then you finish with 2 more conference games after that. So your last 4 games are all conference. So you guys are certainly going to have your hands full the next couple weeks.
Absolutely, and the good thing is we take it 1 game at a time. So we 1 day at a time, 1 game at a time. I thought we had a good practice yesterday. We need to have a better one today. I can promise you all our thoughts and energy and focus is on West Georgia. Got a really good football team, very good up front on both sides of the ball. So that's going to give them a chance to be successful. We got a great little quarterback, Dallas Dickey. So they're going to present some problems for us, like you mentioned, this is kind of the meat of the season, and to be honest with you, it started last week. I know this, I'm glad we played Valdosta when we did. I think they've kind of found their identity with what they want to do on offense, and they're going to be tough moving forward, but we do know at this point of the year, every game's going to be a battle. Every game, we're going to have to play as good as we can. We're going to have to make as little amount of mistakes that usually the team that turns the ball over has the silly penalties and things like that's going to lose the game. So we've got to be as physically sharp as we've got to be. We've got to be as mentally sharp as well.
No doubt, Coach. And like you said, going in, the real season started last week, as you said. The conference games from starting last week here on out through the rest of the season until the playoffs are conference games, and they're all going to be big. Especially this week, though. There's a little more of a sense of a rivalry now because Coach Will Hall, who was at West Alabama, worked under Coach Wallace and played at UNA, as a Harlan Hill trophy winner as a quarterback. He is now coaching at West Georgia. He kind of jumped ships over there, and that was a big rivalry when he was at West Al, and now he kind of brought that to West Georgia. So you got to think there's a little more on the line. And how do we stay focused to get this win and then carry that over to Delta?
Well, I think I kind of want to watch what I say here, Mike. But most of that rivalry, I think, is in the media and the fans. I can promise you, this team that we're playing, regardless of who the head coach was, we would go about this week exactly how we went about it yesterday, exactly how we're going to go about it today, exactly how we're going to go about it tomorrow and Friday. Will's done a great job, obviously, in his first year there. Did a good job taking over, what Coach Wallace kind of got going there at West Alabama. Like I said, as far as the personal rivalry there, I'm sure the media and the fans, they like to, everybody looks for a side story of the game. Well, these two teams, there doesn't need to be a side story. They're two good teams, and I think that needs to be the story. And, I look for it to be a good game.
That's a great diplomatic answer to give, Coach.
Thank you, Mike.
Absolutely. I agree 100%. You got to block all that out. And, there's a lot of camaraderie that comes with that kind of stuff. And the fans and the media, it kind of gets crazy. But, when both teams, that's what they're going to be focused on is getting the win, because this will go a long way into the conference, and all that.
Sure, yeah.
But I want to transition to something else, because, this is a high school football show. And, me and Matt, we break down a lot of high school football in the local area. And Coach Wallace kind of has a reputation of recruiting in a 100-mile radius, and we get a lot of local guys, especially even back in the 90s. Coach Gross, who was the quarterback, he was actually from Lauderdale County High School, so, had a lot of local guys. And, so we have a lot of viewers from the local high schools, and I was just wanting to know if you could give us some advice to those kids. What do you look for as a recruiter in high school kids around the local area?
Well, obviously, when you talk about kind of in general what we look for, I'd be lying to you if I told you we didn't look at their physical appearance. Obviously, height and weight and 40 time and all that, has a lot to do with it. The biggest thing to me is getting yourself seen. Getting yourself out there. I know we have camps every summer that we'd love for the high school guys to come to. Different schools have different types of camps. So, if I'm sitting there as a high school football player, I'm going to, number one, summer's not a time to relax. You can go to the beach for a week or so, but, you need to keep training, keep working hard. You need to try to go to as many camps, to as many schools as, number one, you feel, like that'd be somewhere you'd like to go to, and number two, you feel like that's a realistic shot and a realistic opportunity. Summer camps are important. Highlight tapes. Matt mentioned Huddle earlier in the show. That's such a great tool to, it's so easy to handle and easy to make your own highlight film and, make a highlight film, include a transcript with it, email it to all the, coaches to the schools that, you're interested in. Take the ACT test. There's a lot of, everybody gets so wrapped up in football. You need to really take the ACT test as soon as you can. Junior and high school, see where you're at. You can take it as many times as need be. So, so we look at, everything like that as far as, obviously, if you don't have the grades, I don't care how good you are, you're not going to be able to get in school. You're not going to be able to play football in college. So that's just, the fact of the matter there. Grades need to come first, not only in high school but in college as well. So, we try to get as many guys into camp, I guess, to answer your question, Mike. Get them into camp so we can see them in person. We get out, every home game. We try to get out locally and watch some high school football games on Friday night. And then, towards the later part of the fall semester, we really start getting on Huddle and start evaluating the different guys and what our needs are, whether it's wide out, linebacker, O-line, really try to focus in on our needs first, and then, we get to where, how much scholarship money do we have left, who's the best football player out there we think we can get, kind of do it that way.
Right, and that's very good advice. Basically, keep your academics, as at the forefront as well, and work hard in the summer, and don't take any days off, and basically, you'll get looked at if you have the talent. So
that's right.
Keep working hard, and that's all you can really do. But Coach, before we let you go, I like to always ask this before we have somebody from UNA, before we let them go. We get different answers, Matt, sometimes. But do you believe UNA will win the national championship this year?
Well, Mike, again, I'm going to go back to my diplomatic, I think you called it, answer. Those things are for media and fans. Those are great topics. I promise you, as coaches, And I hope as players, we're only concerned about, Wednesday, October 22nd, what we can do to get better today to give ourselves a better chance to beat West Georgia.
And I think that's what all the players and all the, the whole team, that's what we need to focus on is ourselves and what we can do to win this week and next week and not look ahead,
That's
anymore.
right. The book says, tomorrow today has enough problems of its own, tomorrow will come, so we're going to try to handle what we can get done today and worry about, the future when it gets to be the present.
Thank you, Coach, again. This is the wide receiver coach and the recruiting coordinator for the University of North Alabama Lions, Coach Stedman Campbell. Thank you for being on the show.
Thank you guys for having me on. I enjoyed it.
Thanks, Coach.
Matt, we just had a good segment with Coach Stedman Campbell, and kind of like how Coach Gross was, he gave a lot of good diplomatic answers to us. He didn't get caught up in the camaraderie, and that's always good to have somebody that, will give you a realistic answer. And, you got to appreciate a character guy like Coach Campbell.
Oh, yeah, Coach Campbell. Been here 9 years. He's coached under, I think, Mark Husbeth, who's the head coach at Louisiana Lafayette. Coached under Terry Bowden, who's obviously was the Auburn coach and now the Akron head coach, and now under Bobby Wallace, who's one of the best coaches in Division II history. But a lot of these coaches give those diplomatic answers. They're not going to say a whole lot. They know they need to stay on track. But he is exactly right. The media, the fans, they like to talk about futuristic ideas, and they have to focus one day at a time. It's very cliche, but it's very true, because if they get to thinking about Northwest Missouri, perhaps just naming it the defending national champions and the team that's just rolling again, then you're not going to beat West Georgia. You're not going to beat Delta State. You might not even beat Shorter. So they have to do their job and stay focused one game at a time. It's not necessarily the most exciting answer, but it is the truthful answer, so I can definitely respect that.
Well, Matt, speaking of Northwest Missouri, you just mentioned them, and since we are media, we will talk about this. Northwest Missouri actually lost last week to Pittsburgh State, 35-17, and Pittsburgh State was ranked, I believe, 16 or 17. So Northwest Missouri State moves down. UNA moves into number 3 behind Minnesota Mankato and Minnesota Duluth. So UNA right there in the mix.
Well, and some of these teams, they just stay there. I didn't know that. Thanks for adding that, Mike. And Northwest Missouri won it last year. Pittsburgh State won the national championship in 2011.
That's right.
And
they beat Valdosta, I believe.
They
beat Valdosta one year. They've been here twice.
They beat Wayne State.
Wayne State.
Valdosta didn't beat.
Valdosta beat them.
Well,
I think
we're getting confused now. We're getting a little off topic, but
we'll have to look into our D2 championship history.
Absolutely, but these teams are always there. Minnesota Duluth won the national championship in 2008 and in 2010. They're number 2 right now. Minnesota Mankato was the number 1 seed last year. Now they did get eliminated fairly early in an upset, but some of these teams are still there. But the fact is, you have to get back to what's in front of you. You got to take it one game at a time. And the answers, like I said, they're not always exciting or fun, but they are the truth. And you have to kind of look at it that way, or you're not going to be in that national championship picture later on in the season.
No doubt about it, because a loss this week could seriously put UNA out of the playoffs. I mean, this is how big this game is, because, if West Georgia goes on, they could win the conference with a win against UNA. So, UNA has to focus on this week, put everything into this week, and then, after we get that win, move on to next week, focus everything on Delta.
And if you don't get the win, you still have to focus on Delta,
No doubt.
because there's no telling what West Georgia is or is not going to do. So, there's just, even after a loss, you still have to just one game at a time. You can't be looking back. You can't look too far forward, and you can't look too far back. You got to stay in the moment. And I think under Coach Wallace's leadership and having guys like Coach Campbell and Coach Gross and many others, Coach Poe and Coach Willis, there's just so many great coaches on that staff. They're going to do the right things, and I can't say whether they're going to win this weekend or not, but it's going to be a great football game. But I know they'll be ready to go.
Well, no doubt. You got to focus no matter what. But, I want to look at it like last year. I don't like, necessarily looking back to last year when we're in this year. But, from that standpoint, think about a team like West Alabama, who was, they tied for the conference championship with us, and we beat them in overtime. They barely missed the playoffs. And you got to think, every game counts, especially in college football, Division I, Division II, wherever. Every game counts. So you have to focus every week, no matter if you win or lose. And a one-loss team could get in there, a two-loss team could possibly get in there, but it's hard to do. So it's easier to win out. And UNA's in a great position. They kind of control their own destiny. If they win out, they win they get that first seed and they win the conference, which is big. So, but let's talk about Florida Tech last week. It was kind of a crazy game. It was a lot of offense going on, and UNA kind of did pretty good in the first quarter. They had a 3-touchdown lead, and then Florida Tech comes out and they kind of take it to us, and then it gets really close there at the end, and it takes a drive for us to stop them. They start driving down the field, and then they get hit in bounds with 2 seconds to go and can't get the snap off, and they lose the game. So, anything could have happened, but they had 524 yards, and Trevor Sand, their running back, had 191, and that guy was really good at running back. And then, of course, their wide receiver is one of the best we've seen all year, Sanders, and he scored a touchdown at the end. Matt, that's a very good offensive team, but we had 424 offensive yards, and we looked good competing with their offense, and going into that, we got to feel good about our offense, but our defense may need some work to do.
Well, just looking at some matchups, Dallas Dickey, the quarterback for West Georgia, he was really good against us last year. They just happened to commit 4 or 5 turnovers in that game, and then UNA pulled away. But really, where I see UNA struggles on defense, and then you go to every game, I get to see the home games and try to live stream and things like that, so I don't get to see it as clearly as you do, Mike, but UNA just doesn't tackle that well in space like they did last year. If they get one-on-one opportunities, they lose a lot of those. And in West Georgia, with Dallas Dickey, he likes to run. They run a lot of spread option. They run a lot of standard option. I think the matchup actually bodes well for UNA. Delta is the team that really scares me. They threw it 73 times last week. They lost to West Georgia 24-16. They had a lot of turnovers. I still think Delta State is an elite team. You put the ball in there that much, sometimes bad things happen. But they're going to get – that air raid offense is built to get you out in space one-on-one with defenders. If those defenders don't make the tackle, that's a lot of yards, a lot of big plays, and that's UNA's biggest problem. They don't tackle that well in space. They make breaks on balls. They get some interceptions. They're a very opportunistic team, but they've got to tackle better in space. And if that does not start to get better soon, obviously in the Valdosta game you saw it, they had a little lesser competition there for a couple weeks with Pembroke and Western Oregon. But if that doesn't get better, it's going to cause them some problems later. So they're really going to have to just get back to basics and make open field tackles.
And Matt, great point. Like you said, the defense, we miss some open tackles sometimes, but what was really big for us last season and this season also was turnovers. And of course, we led the entire nation in interceptions with 29, and that's Division I, Division II, everybody. I think we're right ahead of Florida State. But turnovers were big for us. We caused a lot of turnovers, and even in the Florida Tech game last week, with the very first 2 drives, we got fumbles. So, and that was the only turnovers for us that we, got away from them at the end of the game, or until the end of the game. But, you have to make those tackles, and you got to make tackles in open field. You got to play good in between the tackles. And, a lot of people question the scheme that Coach Willis was throwing out there with, they like to throw the ball. They run a lot of, 4 wide-out packages, and, we try to throw an extra DB in there to cover that. And then they run the ball out of it, and, you got to rely on that 3-man front. But, it wasn't necessarily the scheme, but it was the execution of the scheme. Because that scheme has worked for UNA a lot. But last week it just seemed to, it didn't seem to work as good. And Florida Tech did a really good job on offense of exploiting that.
Yeah, you're right, Mike. And sometimes, like you said, it's not necessarily the scheme, it's the execution. To me, it's rarely the scheme. It's usually the execution. But sometimes there is a bad scheme in there.
I agree.
But I think, too, that you also have to stop, and while we look at UNA week to week, we don't look at Florida Tech, but only when they play UNA. So we're seeing the flaws in what UNA is doing and seeing the positives. But we've just got to give Florida Tech credit where credit's due. They played a great football game. They had chances to win that football game. I'm sure in their minds they probably thought they should have won that football game. So you have to give them credit for making some great plays too. Sometimes you just have to tip your cap and say, oh, they made some great plays today.
Yeah, we'll give a lot of credit to Florida Tech. They've really improved since last season. Last season their only conference win was against Shorter. They were a new team, and now they have a season under their belt. Had a good recruiting year.
Watch out. That's all I can say. Watch out. Down there near Miami, a lot of talent. That team can be a Division II power. They are set up great, and it looks like they're already on the rise in year 2. Yeah,
they certainly have a good location pitch there in Melbourne. Melbourne, it was a very beautiful place. Of course, we stayed right there on the beach, and it was nice. And that's a good recruiting pitch for them. But, that team has really improved since last year. And I think we'll see them at the top for years to come, of course, with the Valdostas and the Deltas and the UNAs. And then another one of those teams on the rise now is West Georgia, West Al. We'll see how those teams do as we get along. But, like you said, we got to focus on UNA And UNA had a very good offensive day. Luke Wingo had some good numbers here. He went 16 for 24. He had one interception early in the fourth quarter, or early in the third quarter, excuse me. He kind of lobbed it up and got intercepted. But aside from that, 16 from 24, 288 yards and a touchdown, which is big for us. Lamonte Thompson had a big game, 24 carries, 125 yards and 3 touchdowns. Lamonte, of course, being the player of the game. And then Dre Hall had a big game, 5 catches, 117 yards. Broke a lot of tackles, had a big score for us late in the second half to really secure that win. And as we go along the drives, this is kind of how it went down. You know, at one point, we were just barely up. It was like, trying to think, 27-24, something like that. We were up by field goal, and then Dre had that score, put us up 34-24. We really needed that because we had trouble stopping their offense. After that, we stopped them on 3. We had 3 consecutive 3 and outs. So we stopped their offense, you know, or the defense stopped the offense really good there. And then, of course, we exploited one of those 3 and outs, and we scored on it. And we had field position there. And then, of course, they got the ball back. They score a touchdown. They're down 3. They get the ball back. We have to punt it to them, but, you know, we have good field position. They start driving down the field. The time is running. They run out of timeouts because they had to call them all to stop us. And they throw a pass. And I think what they were going to try to do, they had 6 seconds to go, and the time was stopped. So you're thinking, you know, go ahead and kick the field goal. I mean, you're 50 yards out. Just go ahead and try it. You know, you got a better chance of doing that than throwing it. But they throw the ball. They try to throw a little out route to get it out of bounds. But Darius Jones, we don't talk about him a lot. He's kind of a second-string cornerback, but he was in on that nickel package. He goes in there and makes a tackle inbounds. They can't get the snap off, and we win the game. So Darius Jones, great play right there to keep that guy in bounds. And that's just fundamentals of football. That's the little things.
Well, absolutely, and that's what wins ball games. But like you mentioned earlier with Luke and Lamonte, when the ball's in number 12's hands or number 24's hands, UNA's got a lot of chance for success.
No doubt, a good game for UNA there. A big win going in there, and you know, it was ugly at times, but a great offensive game for us. We stayed in that game. Florida Tech is a great team. We got to give them credit. UNA has they got to play big in this game against West Georgia. West Georgia, a very good team, coached by Will Hall, former UNA quarterback and former West Al coach. A lot to look forward to in this game, and UNA will really need to bring their A game.
It's going to be a good one.
It should be. And, of course, that will be at home at 6 o'clock, so, UNA fans get out there and support the Lions. They're going to look for a lot of people to be there. Now, Matt, as we transition over into high school football, of course, I was out of town again, unfortunately, in Melbourne watching Florida Tech and UNA, and I didn't get to really watch a lot of high school, but you went to the game I really wanted to hear about, and you kept me updated, and you go ahead and give your thoughts on that a little bit.
Well, I went to the Central West Limestone game, and what a football game it was. We were way out in the country. I think it's the first time I ever had a fried Oreo. They were serving something like that out there. Pretty tasty, but anyways, it was really a great game. I thought Central was the more athletic team. But their passing game just really broke down. They had some open plays. The quarterback couldn't find them, and when he did, they kind of dropped it. And so they kind of just really stayed one-dimensional. They completed one pass the whole game, and that was on the last drive of the game. But West Limestone, very young football team. I think 6 seniors, 5 juniors. Everybody else is sophomores, freshmen. And a kid named Reed Blankenship, man, what a young talent. He ran 1 touchdown and caught the other 2 touchdowns for their 3 scores in the game, and he recovered 2 fumbles, and I couldn't tell you the number of tackles, but he certainly made a lot of them. And they kind of really found they really found Reed down the field. He just kind of beat the guy, whoever was covering. They just couldn't cover him. But it was a great game. It was everybody matched the score. Central scored, missed the extra point. West Limestone scored, missed the extra point, 6-6. That was the halftime score. Central scores early in the third quarter. West Limestone scores later in the third quarter, 13-13. Then they both score in the fourth quarter. And so it's 20-20. Central West Limestone has a great drive down there. And then, unfortunately, they were at the 10-yard line, and they were in the middle of the field. They take a sack on third down and knocks them back to about the 18 and also on the right hash mark. And they come out to kick a 35-yard field goal with 55 seconds. And from the press box view, which is, let me clearly say, not the best view to see if a field goal is good or not, but from the press box view, it certainly seemed like he made the field goal. But the ref said no good. Not questioning the refs there because I wasn't standing under the goal post. Central they're just kind of running the clock out. They get a penalty and they're just trying to run the clock out. And West Limestone, being smart, they're using timeouts trying to get the ball back. Well, on 3rd and 18, Denton Chandler, who had 2 fumbles earlier in the game and didn't even play a lot until the fourth quarter, breaks about a 48-yard run and gets them past midfield. And all of a sudden, there's still like 32, 33 seconds. And then Central completes one of the only pass of the game on the drive, gets another good run, and they're running wide and actually getting out of bounds. And they actually set up for a 33-yard field goal with 5 seconds left, and he knocked it right through the upright. So West Limestone was really depleted. That officially knocked them out of the playoffs. Central needed the win. In another game, Brooks lost to Deschler, who's leading that region. Brooks and Central this week for that final playoff spot. The other 3, Deschler's number 1, Wilson's number 2, Elkmont's number 3. That's not changing. The winner of Brooks Central gets that 4th and final playoff spot, so it's going to be a great game Friday night.
Hey, Matt, you'll never guess where I'm going this week.
You're going to Brooks and Central.
I am.
There you go. There you go.
And I'm very excited about it. I think that's going to be a good game. And like you said, we said this last week, and we had Elliot Hacker on the show, the PA announcer for Central and Central Insider. You know, we talked about it a lot. They made a lot of mistakes, and they had to overcome those mistakes to win ball games. And of course, West Limestone, it almost cost them that late drive that you were talking about, 5 seconds to go, kick the field goal to win it. Man, you know, that's clutch right there. And that's what Central needs going into this game. And, you know, we'll talk about that in a few minutes. But, of course, Thursday I'm going to be going down to Hackleburg and R.A. Hubbard. And you talked a little, you watched a lot of 1A football. And, you know, I'm looking forward to seeing R.A. Hubbard's athletic quarterback, Carter.
Yeah, and Hackleburg's got a good passing game themselves. So.
Oh, great teams there.
Yeah, you're going to have fun.
And that game will decide who would be first place in that region, in Region 1A.
Wow.
Or, yeah. Region
Well,
8,
you miss a couple weeks, and they book you rock solid with 2 great games on Thursday and Friday.
Well, I made sure that happened because, you know, Jeff asked me if I wanted to go, and I said, you know, I want to catch up on all this. Like, I missed it. So, yeah, let me go. I'll do it. And then I was really excited to hear about Brooks and Central. So, I'll be out there Friday, looking forward to it. But on our predictions last week, I went 11-0. You went 10-1. Of course, you took West Limestone in the upset. Nearly got it. You was a field goal away, or actually a minute away, really. I mean, that close, but yeah, we did pretty good on our picks, I'd say. But
well, you can't do better than 11-0. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, I got lucky that time. But now let's go ahead and make our predictions for this week, and we're going to start in Class 6A, Region 8. This may be the game of the week. Florence taking on Decatur. Both teams at the top of the region. Decatur 4-1 in the region right now. Florence 5-0, and they sit at the top. They can clinch with a win. If they lose, Decatur will get number 1. And, of course, this game has a lot of meaning for Muscle Shoals as well because Muscle Shoals will decide their seeding on this game. Because if Decatur loses and Muscle Shoals wins, Muscle Shoals will get the 2nd seed. So this Florence-Decatur game is big for a lot of teams. But I like Florence to get the win here, Matt. And, you know, they're undefeated in the region. That should carry over into this game. What do you think?
Yeah, I think Florence will get the win as well. But let me say they played Hartselle last week, and the final score was 25-3. Don't let that fool you. That was a 3-3 score at halftime. Very competitive game. Florence athletes just took over in the second half, made a few more plays, and extended that lead and won the ball game comfortably. But the Decatur's a really good team. They're at home, and you know I'm always big on these home field advantages. These high school fans, they get out there and get loud and really get behind their teams. I think it makes a big difference. But I think Florence is the class of this region, and I expect them to go on the road behind. I think Blake. Is it Hawkins?
Hawkins.
I always said Dawkins or Hawkins.
Hawkins.
I can't get the guy's name right, but Blake Hawkins.
With an H.
With an H. He will. I expect him to really get I expect him to kind of go vertical in that game. I can see them kind of extending that lead, but it should be a competitive game. So I'm going to go 28-20 Florence, and they're going to wrap up that number 1 seed in the region.
Yeah, I'm going to go 31-17. I really like Florence offensively, but I think Decatur's a competitive team. Of course, their only loss in the region is to Muscle Shoals, and that's a team Florence beat, 39-20, I believe it was at Brawley. But Decatur's a really good team. They've beaten, they pretty much took the region by storm, and then of course they ran into Muscle Shoals and got a loss, and now they got to face Florence, who I believe is head and shoulders above everybody in the region. Just a little bit. But every team in this region, all the way down, is very good. I mean,
we mentioned that before. I mean, anybody can beat anybody in that region.
And no doubt, like Athens is at the bottom of that. They lost to Austin, and they're 1-5, so they're off from region play this week. I think they're off, and I think they end their season with Deschler actually. So that'd be a really good game to watch.
It'd be a fun game.
But I really like Florence. Florence has been solid offensively and defensively. They had a good showing last week, and I against Hartselle, I think they'll get the win this week because Hartselle's a pretty good team, and they're kind of fighting for their playoff life as well. But another game in that region with significance is Muscle Shoals taking on Coleman. Of course, we cover Muscle Shoals a lot, and they're coming off a bye week, Matt. And they're 3-2 in the region. If they win, I mean, they're in the playoffs no matter what. But this game decides their seeding. If they win this game and Florence wins, they'll move into the 2nd seed. Of course, if Decatur wins, that means they'll stay at the 3rd seed with a win. And I think if they lose, they'll move down to 4th. And I think either Hartselle or Coleman one would move ahead of them. I believe it'd be Coleman, actually. But I think Hartselle owns the head-to-head over Coleman. So a lot of confusion there.
Yeah, we'll play that out and figure it out then. We'll confuse ourselves. But I know at the top, Florence wins, they're 1. If Florence loses, they're 2. Decatur's 1, and Muscle Shoals is 3 with a win. But Muscle Shoals, under Coach Batson, man, they just do a great job out there. And that beautiful stadium they have, and they're just a team that's just going to continue to get better and better and better, not just this year and years to come. And they started slow this year. Like I said, they lost a lot of key seniors off that defense, and the running game wasn't quite as strong as it was last year. They were just, everything was kind of predicated off what they did running the football. And I personally like Muscle Shoals this week, and I think that I think coming off this bye, they're going to be healthy, and they're going to be ready to go. And like I said, I just think they've gotten better. They were the 5A state runner-ups last year. They lost to just a phenomenal Spanish 4 team, and they moved up to 6A this year. And like I said, they started slow, but they got it rolling now. And they're coming off a bye week. They're at home. Those Muscle Shoals fans love their football team. I expect them to take care of Coleman. I'm going to say 35-14.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I'm going to say 28-7. I like Muscle Shoals over Coleman. Coleman, they gave Florence a little competition. They lost that game 28-14. Coleman's always been in that, in the race. And, a loss here, I think, will put them out. But Muscle Shoals, I really like how they've progressed since their slow 1-2 start. They've really came a long way. And, I really like Muscle Shoals, 28-7. Russellville in Class 5A action, they're going to be taking on Pope John Paul, who's a winless team so far. They've lost all their games. But Russellville, they've already clinched their playoff berth. It's already been set in stone. They're going to be the 2nd seed, and they'll have a home game in their first playoff game. And, the only thing doing in that region is West Point and Lawrence County. The winner of that game will be the 4th seed. And J.O. Johnson's 3. East Limestone is 1, who's, undefeated right now, and then Russellville at 2. I like Russellville in this game, 35-7, but I like Russellville. They were impressive last week in their 21-13 win over Lawrence County. Russellville looking good going into the playoffs, Matt.
Mike, I heard a lot about the Russellville game. I talked to Matt Wilson, who was with us last week, and they really struggled in a lot of ways. They turned the ball over, Lawrence County turned the ball over 3 times on their side of the field that set up Russellville. Russellville's offense just never really got going. I actually think Russellville, this needs to be the game. They have a weaker opponent, and just go out there and take it to them and get some confidence back. With the tragic injury to the young man on their football team, sometimes you see teams really rally around and get better. Sometimes it just, you try to rally, but it's painful, and you love your brother and your teammate, and sometimes you just don't pick it up. But I'm not in that locker room. I know Coach Heaton's doing a good job down there, and I'm not in that locker room, so I can't really speculate on what's going on. But they have not played that well the last 3 weeks. They lost to East Limestone, who's a great team, so pretty competitive. But Matt was at the game and really shared that East Limestone looked like the better team. They kind of pulled out a close one against West Point, but he said they struggled in that game with turnovers. This week they didn't turn it over, but they got so many turnovers. It was really more just mistakes by Lawrence County that allowed them to win that game 21-13. So I actually think they're not the same team they were 3 weeks ago, and this may be the week that they can kind of get everything back clicking and get some confidence back, because right now I don't see Russellville going very far in the playoffs unless some things change. But because they are playing lesser opposition this week, I think they'll go on the road, and I'll say 42-3 just based off who they're playing. Mm-hmm. But they need to get better right now. They're kind of trending in the wrong direction, I think.
And Matt, I sort of agree with what you're saying. They've played a lot of close games, but I have to take this opinion on it. At the end, I think that really helps them that they played a lot of close games, even though, they played a Lawrence County team that's made a lot of mistakes. But they overcame adversity towards the end of the game, and I really think that's going to be big for them. Because you look at week 2 when they played J.O. Johnson, a very good team who's a 3 seed in the playoffs. They beat them 26-25. They've won a lot of close games, including this one last week. They lost by a touchdown to East Limestone, who's undefeated and 4th in the entire state in 5A. So, Russellville, they're going to have to get tougher and tougher. The games have gotten tougher for them, and they just kind of, hadn't been as good as they were starting out, because they really impressed with the win over Deschler in week 1. and then beat J.L. Johnson. They really look like the real deal. Coach Mark Eaton's done a great job there at Russellville. But like you're right, they do have to make a statement here this week and get a lot of momentum going into the playoffs. So I like them to beat Pope John Paul. I think it'll be 35-7, and Russellville gets the win. Now, here's the game that we talked about, for a few minutes briefly, and we've been talking about this game a lot because we thought this game in Class 4A Region 8 would decide who goes to the playoffs at the 4th seed. That's going to be Brooks taking on Central. And I've been looking forward to this game for a while, and now I'll have the opportunity to go and cover that game. So, Brooks and Central, that's a kind of a coin flip if you think about it. Both teams are about even. I did on my blog. I did a comparative, the game of common opponents, and from what I've seen, it looks like they've played every game about even. But it's kind of a toss-up, Matt. But the winner gets the 4th seed, the loser's out. Matt, who do you like?
Well, first I want to say I think that they're just so different in their approach. Brooks likes to put the ball in the air. Central wants to pound you with the ball, and they like to run a lot of misdirection. But their strength is the ground game. There's a key player, our buddy Elliot that was on the show with us. His brother, Jonathan Hacker, who I don't think he's committed anywhere. I know he's looking at Mississippi College, which is a Division II school in the Gulf South Conference. This guy is just a hoss down there on the line of scrimmage. They double team him, it seems like, every play. He comes in and plays some fullback for him. I think he's really going to be able to really get in there, take up 2 blockers, allow for some pass rush, and I think that's going to make Brooks make some mistakes. And I think he's going to be a real big key to that. Now, with that being said, I think I think Brooks is going to key in on what Central's doing offensively and just stack the box with the run and say, if you can beat us vertically, beat us, but you haven't proven you can do it yet. Central probably should have won last week off talent. Things went a certain way that they easily could have lost the game, but then they still found a way to win the game. To me, that momentum is going to carry over. They're going back home. It's going to be a very excited crowd. They haven't played well at home their last couple of games. I'm taking Central in this game. I think they're going to come out with a win in a very tight game. I'm going to go 17-10 Central.
Okay, I hear you, Matt. And you got a lot of points there. Jonathan Hacker, a key player for Central. Of course, they thrive in the run game, and Brooks likes to throw the ball. But let's key in on somebody for Brooks. Lazarius Decatur is one of the guys that really caught my attention when I saw him play Lauderdale County, even though they really lost that game. He kind of kept them in it with some big runs. And, of course, they're going to have to key in on him when if Central expects to shut down the pass, they'll have to key in on him once it gets into open space.
Mike, I got to ask you, when they lost 56-7, at what point were they in the game?
They weren't in the game. They were never in the game.
You said kept them in the game.
Well, let me think of how I can phrase that.
I understand.
I guess I just phrased that wrong, but he kind of kept them from not scoring. He got their long score, if that makes any sense.
He got them on the board. I got you.
All right, but we'll quit making fun of Brooks for a little bit.
Okay.
And with that being said, I'm going to take Brooks to win this game. I think Brooks knows what's at stake in this game. Of course, Central had that big win last week over West Limestone. Brooks, early in the season, handled West Limestone pretty easily. They beat them 45-18. So, Brooks has the momentum there, the advantage there. And then you look at Central, they beat a team like Wilson, or they lost to a team like Wilson 35-9, while Brooks just, 55-14 got destroyed. But you look at those kind of games. But
and then I want to look at another game when Central played, and it's so hard to compare scores. I mean, I do it, we all do it, but sometimes these things just don't add up. And I'll give you an example. Also, Deshler beat Brooks this weekend 40-14, but it was 40-0 at halftime.
Yeah,
they completely called the dogs off. They could have easily pushed that much further out. Where Central was tied with Deshler at halftime.
Yeah.
And had a chance. They took the lead in the third quarter, but then it was called back. So, they never took the lead, but a penalty brought it back. They would have taken the lead in the third quarter. And Brooks couldn't even play with Deshler. So it's tough because then you see where Brooks, obviously, like you mentioned, dominated West Limestone, and then Central gets a late field goal miss and then pulls out a great drive to just kind of escape there. So it's just so hard to compare scores. I think every matchup is a different dynamic in and of itself.
And then one more thing to look at as far as comparing matchups, you got to look at how early and late in the season they played in the game.
That's true.
And,
Very true.
You got to think Central, they've kind of, fallen off a little bit. They've made a little more mistakes in the past few weeks. And, of course, their schedule was a little tougher. But they played Deshler tough, even though up until halftime. And then, of course, Brooks has kind of fallen down. Since, their quarterback, Tyus Thomas, got hurt, and they had a guy, Colton Medley, step in at quarterback. But, I really like Brooks in this game. I think they know what's on the line. They've made the playoffs 16 consecutive years, and I don't think they want that to end. I believe they'll go on the road. They're going to beat Central by a field goal, 27-24. I'm taking Brooks.
That's a good pick. That's going to be a great game.
Oh, yeah, I can't wait to see it. It's going to be competitive. It's going to come down the wire. As we move on, Class 3A, another game with playoff significance in Class 3A. This is Colbert County taking on Sheffield. Sheffield had a bad loss last week to Lexington, which really hurt them a little bit, 55-40, and that kind of put them behind. Colbert County and Lexington are both 4-2 in the region. Sheffield's 3-3 right now, and this game could have a little bit of head-to-head determination. If Sheffield gets the win here, that's going to cause a three-way tie, assuming Lexington loses to Madison Academy. And that's going to cause a lot of weirdness. But if Colbert County wins, and it should be them and Lexington getting into the playoffs, and Sheffield will be the team that's left out. But Matt, who do you like in this game?
Well, you're exactly right. That three-way tie for the last two spots with Colbert County, Sheffield, and Lexington. If Sheffield's able to beat Colbert County, and they do get them at home. But to me, Colbert County, they lost to Madison Academy earlier. They did lose to Madison Academy, but they lost to Lauderdale County earlier in the season. If they played again, I think Colbert County may actually beat them. I think they're a little more balanced, and I think they've really found their stride. I mean, they just kind of started slow, but I think Colbert County will go into Sheffield. And, I think you have Madison Academy as the clear number one in the region. Colbert County and Lauderdale County are kind of a close second to me, even though Lauderdale County is the 2 seed for beating Colbert County earlier in the year. Then I think it's a drop-off. Lexington and Sheffield are close, and Lexington beat them 55-40 last week. So I think Colbert County is just a lot better. Myron Smith, man, he's just tearing it up. Another big game, well over 100 yards, a couple touchdowns. I think they passed for about 3 touchdowns. They're very balanced. Sheffield's kind of one-dimensional, and I just think Colbert County going to Sheffield, and they'll solidify that number 3 spot in the region. I'll have them 41-17.
Well, Matt, I don't know if I'm ready to pick Colbert County to beat Lauderdale County again in another matchup, but I think it would be closer than a 26-7 was last time. But I do like Colbert County. I think they have improved, and they got a little bit of work to do on defense, and they've made a lot of adjustments. Of course, they had an impressive 49-24 win over Lexington a couple weeks ago, and they got a lot of momentum now. And Sheffield, of course, lost 55-40 to Lexington, but they stayed in that game. Sheffield's gonna, they are one-dimensional. They love to run the ball, but man, I go Colbert County. I think Colbert County really stretched the field out on them. I'm going to say 38-21. As we move on, West Limestone taking on Wilson in another 4A matchup. Wilson's already locked in as the second seed, so it won't really have any playoff significance. But, West Limestone, they're coming off a loss to Central on the last second field goal, 23-20. Matt, I like Wilson in this game. I'm going to say 42-14. Matt, what's your analysis?
Well, I think you're kind of right on the money. I think what this game may not have any playoff implications for Wilson. I think they realize it's important to play well right now. Their only loss this year is to Deschler, who's the 1 seed there. I think Wilson's going to keep rolling and roll right into the playoffs and be a real tough contender when they get there. West Limestone, they're getting better. I mean, they started 0-5, and then they beat East Lawrence handily, which is not a very good team, and I can't think of the other team they beat, but they beat somebody else along the way there too. And then obviously they had their chance against Central. So they're getting better, but I just think the talent differential between Wilson and West Limestone is just too much. Wilson's going to keep rolling. You say 42-14, I'll say 45-10.
All right. Yeah, I think West Limestone has gotten better over the past few weeks, and they did compete with Central, but Wilson's just too powerful. Wilson's great offense. Jason Futrell, of course, the playmaker for them, and they got a lot of seniors. I played with that team back when I was a senior. They were all freshmen, so they were all coming up, getting ready to, for this year. And they're a really good team, and I think they'd be competitive in the playoffs, and they could either host Hamilton or Haleville in the playoffs, depending on how that works out in the first round, and we'll see how that goes. But I like Wilson this week, and I believe they have Hatton next week, so we'll see how that goes for Wilson. They will be at home, so 42-14 for me. Deschler taking on Rogers. And, of course, we heard the news about Coach Jake Linville for Deschler passing away Sunday night. And, you really hate to hear that for the Deschler community. And, of course, our thoughts and prayers go out to them. Deschler, a big game with Rogers. They're already locked in as the number 1 seed. Rogers is pretty much out of the playoffs. I like Deschler to get the win, 45-17. I think they're going to kind of do a win for Coach Linville kind of thing, Matt.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I want to say something else. We mentioned Coach Linville at the beginning of the segment. And I don't know if I got my words out the way I wanted to, because when the evidence showed that it wasn't a suicide, I was saying that's a good thing. Well, there's nothing good when somebody loses their life tragically, and I don't want to be misunderstood in my statements there, and if I was, I apologize. It's very tragic, and I hate it for him and his family, and such a young and upcoming coach, and it's just very tragic. And I just want to once again make a statement. Like Mike said, all thoughts and prayers go out to Coach Linville, his players, his coaching staff, more importantly, his family, and I wish them the best in this tough time. But just back to football now, yeah, it could be a win-win for Coach Linville. You know, you don't know the emotions of that locker room. It's hard to say that's their leader, that's their guy, and unfortunately he's no longer with them physically. I'm sure his spirit will be all over that field Friday night. But I think Deschler's just a lot better football team. I hope, because they have so much potential to go far, and I hope maybe this turns into let's do it for Coach. I think they're just too good, and I hope they have the focus they need Friday night. I'm sure those coaches will be doing the best they can to keep them as focused as possible in such a tough time. But I like Deschler, and I'll say 34-7.
34-7, yeah. And I said 42-14. Or no, I said 45-17. Of course, Coach Statham, the assistant coach, he's stepping in as the head coach. Of course, he coached at Collingwood High School, stepping in for Coach Linville. But, we really hope the best for Deschler and that they get through all this. And I expect them to get the win this week and have a lot of momentum going into the playoffs. Lauderdale County taking on Clements in Class 3A action here. They're going to be on the road, but, Lauderdale County's last two games have kind of been, I don't want to say cupcakes, but, you have to be honest there. They played West Morgan, who didn't really have a win. Now Clements, one-win team over West Morgan. I like Lauderdale County rolling into the playoffs with a lot of momentum. 56-14, Matt. Yeah,
they beat West Morgan. I saw where West Morgan is 0-25 in their last 25. So that is if that's definitely the epitome of a cupcake of an excellent team. But no, Clements, the competition is not going to get much stiffer this week. They could play anywhere, and I don't think it'd matter. Lauderdale County big, 51-7.
Yeah, and they're in the 2 seed right now. Should have a lot of momentum going in. Moving on, West Morgan, as we just talked about, they're going to be taking on Colbert Heights, which will be a little easier for them than Lauderdale County last week. West Morgan, they may snap that 25-game streak. Well, at least they're going to be looking to. But I like Colbert Heights to win. I'm going to say 21-0 in a shutout.
Well, I like Colbert Heights. They they had their playoff dashes. Playoff hopes kind of killed here a week or two ago.
By Sheffield.
Yeah, by Sheffield. So it was 2 weeks ago, and they're at home and they're going to have some money. Colbert County kind of took it to them last week, 45-12. So they're going to have a little frustration pent up, and they're going to want to get it out. And I think West Morgan is just a team they can do it against. So you're saying 21-0. I'm going to say 48-0.
All right, yeah. Colbert Heights actually a pretty good team, and just kind of had some bad games, especially against Colbert. They were outmatched against Colbert County, and they played pretty close against Sheffield. 33-21 was the final there, but they're going to be looking ahead to just ending on a good note, and this will be a good team to do it against. Madison Academy will be rolling into town, the top team taking on Lexington, Lexington, they found their way, into a good position for the playoffs with a 55-40 win over Sheffield, and that puts them in a good position. But Matt, you got to expect Madison Academy to roll in with a chip on their shoulder, the top seed in the region and the top team in the entire state in 3A. So, you got to expect Madison Academy to get a big win there. I'm going to say 49-13.
Well, before I break that direct matchup down, I want to give Wes Shirley, he deserves a game ball, man. 5 touchdowns last week in a 55-40 win. He's the quarterback. He rushed for 3 touchdowns. He passed for 1 touchdown, and it was 48-40 late in the game, and Sheffield was about their own 40-yard line, and he intercepted a pass and ran it back for his 5th touchdown to seal the deal. And what a great game. I mean, that's just phenomenal. With all that being said, they have absolutely no chance to beat Madison Academy this week.
I hate to say that, but you're right.
Well, we mentioned before, Kerryon Johnston, I think ESPN has him ranked as the number 3 athlete in the country. He's playing 3A football. He is phenomenal. You're going to see a lot of him. You're going to see a lot of people from Madison Academy. I agree with you. It shouldn't be very close, 42-7.
Yeah, and I hate to say that, but Lauderdale County really took it to Lexington earlier in the season, 55-7. And this team's I won't say a little, but kind of a lot better than Lauderdale County.
Well, they beat Lauderdale County 34-7. I mean, they're just far and above better than anybody in the region.
No doubt.
They may be that much better than anybody in the state. But
I agree with you, man. I really think they're that good.
They are. They're just that good.
It's hard to see talent like that. When a team like that rolls into town, it's a big deal. You see a lot of athletes, and those guys will probably be playing Division I. So.
And if you look at some of these lower levels, 3A, you're starting to get in the middle range. But I've watched a lot of 1A and 2A football. You get to 6 and 7A, one great player makes a difference. He doesn't necessarily make all the difference. You get in some of these lower levels of football, one or two good athletes just changes the game completely.
So true.
They just make such an impact on the game. And a guy like Kerryon Johnson, they have plenty of other great players. They make such an impact, and they make an impact at the 6A or 7A level. But at the 2A, 3A level, it's just unbelievable the impact they can make.
Yeah, I really feel like that one player and a lot of good players around him, Malik Miller, Kerryon Johnson, a lot of guys like that really helps that team. Speaking of 2A football, we're going to wrap it up here with 4 games that are 2A and 1A. Doesn't really have a lot of significance because all these teams are out of the playoff picture, but looking to end their season on high notes. We'll start with Cherokee and Hatton. Cherokee got their first win last week over Mars Hill, 32-6. And they're playing Hatton this week. Hatton already clinched the 3rd seed in 2A Region 8. So, and they beat Thorntown 36-0, a team that Cherokee lost to 9-3. So, Matt, of course, I'm going to go Hatton here, 36-21. But I do think that that Cherokee will compete.
Well, Cherokee did finally get in the win column. They had a few chances earlier in the year. They lost a tight one to Phil Campbell. They lost a tight one to Thorntown. It was 6-6 in the second quarter of the Mars Hill game this past week, and they really just kind of ran away with it. And I've kind of mentioned some of their skill players like Chris Stanley. He finally put together a real good game. I think the offensive line played better there. He was over 100 yards and a couple scores. So, I'm glad Cherokee finally got a win. I mean, you always want to see a team get a win, and I'm glad to see them finally get that win. But unfortunately, I think it'll be their only win. They're playing Hatton. I'll say 35-10. I don't think they're improved enough to compete with some of the better teams there.
Right. Of course, the next game, Sullivan at Mars Hill. Mars Hill, looking for that first region win, and they had a chance last week against Cherokee but couldn't get it. And it's not looking good this week. They're playing Sullivan. Sullivan, of course, the second-place team in that region. And they won against Phil Campbell 42-7. And of course, Mars Hill really struggled with Phil Campbell. So, Matt, you got to think Mars Hill probably won't get their first region win this week.
No, I don't think they're going to get a region win at all this year. But they are out there competing, and they did beat Waterloo earlier in the season. And I think that's going to kind of be their one win in their first year of football. But I like Sullivan. 38-6. That's just too much talent on one side, and I think that'll be the difference.
I agree with you, Matt. A lot of talent at Sullivan, and they're going to outmatch Mars Hill. I'm going to say 42-7. Vina and Shoals Christian. This game will be pretty interesting because these teams have one thing in common. They've both beaten Waterloo as their only win for the season. Of course, Vina beat them 40-6 early in the season. Shoals Christian beat them last week 42-0. Matt, I'm going to take Shoals Christian in this game. I think Shoals Christian is the better team than Vina, but I think it'll be competitive, and I see Shoals Christian pulling away in the second half, 28-6.
Yeah, I think, I mentioned 2 weeks ago we were talking about Shoals Christian, last week, but I think it was 2 weeks ago after they lost a tough game to Phillips, and I just noticed how much better they've gotten. I haven't covered them since that game, but they have just consistently gotten better, and they finally, and I said then, I thought they had a chance to win all 3 of their last games against Waterloo, Vina, and then Mars Hill next week, and I'm going to hold to that. I think that's just a team that's just consistently gotten better and better. A lot of credit to that coaching staff, Coach Anderson and them. And I think being at home, they got their first win last week. It was at Waterloo. They want to give those hometown fans a big win this week, and I think they'll get that win. And like you, I don't even think it'll be over that close. I'll say 34-7.
34-7. Yeah, that'll be the first big home win for Shoals Christian this year. And yeah, like you said, giving their fans a home win would be good. And then finally ended up on Waterloo, who's yet to find their first win. They're going to be taking on Jacksonville Christian. They'll be traveling over to Jacksonville, which is, of course, on the east side of Alabama. And the only thing that we really know about Jacksonville Christian, they played Alabama School for the Deaf just as Waterloo did. Waterloo lost 38-24, while Jacksonville Christian, they won 56-6. So, that's really the only thing we know about Jacksonville Christian. They're 3-5 overall. I think by default, you kind of have to take Jacksonville Christian in this game.
Yeah, as much as I talk about it, you always want to see some of these lower echelon schools at least get a win. And Waterloo, when they play the lower echelon teams, they still get beat handily. They're just a team that's really struggling. And unfortunately, I just don't think the win column's going to be in their future this week or next week. So I think they'll finish 0-10. I don't know. I've never seen Jacksonville Christian play. I don't know anything about them. Having a common opponent in the Alabama School of the Deaf, and Waterloo lost to them by 14, and Jacksonville Christian won by 50. I did mention I don't like to always compare scores, but sometimes when they're that far out of whack, it just kind of tells me. So I'm really kind of taking Jacksonville Christian by default because I'm really banking on Waterloo just not being very good, more so than what Jacksonville Christian can or can't do. And as long as they can show up and be somewhat competitive, they should have their way with Waterloo. So I'll say 35-0.
Yeah, I'm going to say 49-0. And, Matt, as we wrap it up, we have a good week on tap here. This will be the last week of region games, so a lot of teams need these wins. A lot of it's been set in stone, but, Central Brooks is a good example of a game. Muscle Shoals and Coleman, Florence and Decatur, all these can decide, some seedings, and then Colbert County and Sheffield as well can decide, who makes the playoffs or not. So a lot of big games this week, and then some non-region games next week leading into the playoffs. So a lot of good stuff going on. And as we get ready to wrap it up, you got any closing thoughts?
No, I'm just looking forward to an exciting week of football. Unfortunately, I won't be out covering games this week. I'm going to be in the studio with Jimmy O and JD, kind of helping them with the show a little bit this week. So I'll be just kind of waiting for you to keep me updated out there at Central and Brooks.
Man, yeah, I don't love being out in the field, and I'll definitely be doing that. I'll be tuning in to 97.9 to give my scores, and that's what I would encourage everybody else to do. 97.9 FM, you can check out Jaleesa and JD and Jimmy O, and you can check out Matt as well on the radio, and they'll be keeping you up to date on all the scores. Of course, I'll be out at Central Brooks keeping you up to date on that. And if you're at any of the games by chance Friday night, let us know. Give us an update. The number is on the website. You can find us on foxsportsshoals.com, and you can tweet at us, like us on Facebook, and tune in to 97.9 from 5 to 7 and 9 to 11 on Friday night. For Matt Suleski, my co-host, for Coach Campbell, who we had earlier in the show for UNA football, JD in studio, I'm Mike Ezekiel.